Greetings, divine, all blessed, peace and love, joy, and prosperity. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Come on in the room. I only have a moment to spend with you today, so please come on in, come to the room. All is truly and indeed a blessing. You are now sitting live with, and always in archive at your leisure and convenience with the Divine Prince, Pan African spiritualist, practitioner, author, and advisor, a lagoon. Odoye, Hoodoo, Obeya, Bokor, sharing with you in all things spiritual, mystical, metaphysical, cosmic, evolutionary, revolutionary, universal, healing, and holistic from a Pan-African Hoodoo world spiritualist perspective. Understanding that truly and indeed a blessing if you can just see beyond the veils, for it is all just an illusion and a test and one of the greatest divine mysteries of this life cycle. This is my constant prayer, my mantra, affirmation, reverberation, reiteration, and it is my personal, ever living reality. It is crucial to the very foundation of my understanding, my teaching, my walk, works, my demonstration along this divine, all blessed life path and journey. It is how I, the Divine Prince, make sense out of all that we are challenged with here in our daily existence on Mother, Father, Earth. And it is my personal place of power and understanding, that place from where I begin, place from where I realize and crystallize all my endeavors, understanding that I alone create and co-create my divine destiny, and I alone create and co-create my divine, all blessed reality. And so it is. Ashe. Asheo and Ashe. Welcome, divine, all blessed, each and every one of you. Kay, Amina, thank you so much for being our honored moderator in our group, in our chat. Thank you so much. I appreciate you for being present, even when I'm not able to be present. Many of you do know and understand this is a season of transition. This is Carnival. This is a season of celebration and transition and masking in honor of the ancestors. So right now I'm sewing somewhere upwards of 12 hours or more a day to make this glorious deadline that is Fat Tuesday, Mardi Gras Day. Many of you come and appreciate and enjoy and celebrate here with us in this beautiful city, but most enchanted city in America, New Orleans, Louisiana, here for Carnival and indeed for Mardi Gras Day. But understand that it is a year-long undertaking to make this happen every year. It's a year-long undertaking of love and dedication and commitment and vocation to culture and tradition and history and cultural performance to make this happen every day. So please do forgive me. Sewing 12 hours a day makes you delirious. So I'm going to miss some shows between today and March 5th, Fat Tuesday. So please do forgive me. I've got to pay the bills, so I'll have to work. So I won't always be able to be here, but I'm going to do my best to be present here with you in this shared space of gods and goddesses at high noon U.S. Central Standard Time here on the revolutionary Hoodoo, New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes on YouTube Live. All is truly and indeed a blessing. As always, please do type your questions in capital letters that I might address here in the chat, here live for the group, for the room. Please reserve your personal questions and comments and requests to direct email at DivinePrince at houseofthedivineprince.com. All is truly and indeed a blessing. Asheo, Ashe. And of course, if you don't have questions for me, I'm going to get back to sewing. So all is truly and indeed a blessing. I say it all the time. I used to say it on my Blog Talk Radio of 10 years. I'm not here to hear the sound of my own voice. My ego doesn't need it. It's not a requirement for my own personal sense of wholeness and fulfillment. I get a sense of wholeness and fulfillment in doing the work, in doing the voodoo, in representing the culture, indeed in ancestral masquerade. And so I have a lot on my plate. But if you have questions, if you have comments that I can answer and address, um, I'll be more than happy to do so in this space. Otherwise, I'll join you again at my next convenient moment at high noon, U.S. Central Standard Time, here on YouTube Live. All is a blessing. Thank you so much, Ujo Wajet. When did I know this was my calling? I often say there is a understanding, and then there's an inner standing. And then that has to ultimately show up in your demonstration, what you do, how you act, what we say we believe. I don't care what the politic, what the religion, what the cultural practice and or tradition. It's one thing to say it, and then it's another thing for it to show up in your demonstration. So my family knew as a child. My great aunts knew as a child. I was one of those children that was said, "Oh, he's gonna be a preacher someday," but it wasn't just in that classic traditional Christian, sense of what that was, particularly coming out of the mouths of the family members in whom were proclaiming it. Because this one particular great aunt, Aunt Vicky Vera Hunt, in the Broomfield bloodline, she would say that out of one side of her mouth, and then out of the other side of her mouth, we were reading coffee grinds and talking about ghost stories and Jinn and the Trail of Tears, and the voodoo as it would manifest in the family. And of course, my evangelical Christian parents would hush her, shoot her down. But the energy was already out there. The horse was already out of the barn, as I like to say. So I then started doing what many people do: reading, studying, experimenting. And we're talking now elementary school. Okay, I'm not talking 20, 30, 40 years old. Elementary school. Um, my parents were stealing my books, hiding my books, returning my books in the fourth, fifth, sixth grade. My mother is a retired educator, retired school teacher. So the library was something that, was our playground. We knew how to navigate, and had access to freely in terms of what your parents would or would not allow somebody to do. So going to the library, particularly in the 1970s into the 1980s, and accessing anything from voodoo to witchcraft books was very relatively easy to do. The Republican evangelical movement that created the Ronald Reagan years and many years that followed. Also, it was during that time that many of these books, including Uncle Tom's Cabin, have been removed from public school libraries because the material is seen as salacious, whether it's spiritually salacious, sexually salacious, racially salacious. Many of those books were then taken out of the school system in the mid to the late 80s. So by that time, I'm already a homeless runaway teenager on the street. And unlike many young people who find themselves in that predicament and unfortunate statistics in many ways, spirit guided me. I take no credit for being superior to anyone or being more astute than the next person. I think my personality and that upbringing, particularly from my mother, um, created a environment within me for studying and learning and wanting to know in a very serious way at a very young age. Even at 18, 19, 20, 21, 25, many of my peers, my friends, people that I could hold a conversation with were already in their 50s, were already in their 60s, were already in their 70s. So the process of initiation was already underway. Um, but I also took that time I like to look at it as being in between society, what society is and what society wanted of me, and then who spirit wanted and desired for me to be. And let me make it clear, spirit, Mami Wata, the voodoo, Mawa Lisa wanted credit for who I was. So I understood also at a very young age that my inability to normalize myself, for lack of better words, in this society, in this culture, even in my family and in my community, um, I realized early on that that was not going to be me. That I absolutely had to, at some point, surrender to this call. Sometimes I use biblical stories because not because I believe them, but because many of you understand the symbolism hidden within them. I was not going to be Jonah in the belly of the whale. I did run. I ran for many years. I ran from my family. I ran from the trauma. I ran from the drama. I ran from the white supremacy and the hatred and the homophobia and the classism and all those sorts of things. Um, but I didn't run from the voodoo. I ran to the voodoo. It was my salvation, if you will. So the process of then getting on board this train, symbolically, of then learning, taking the steps, it then began in earnest. But I was doing readings, as many people in our environment experiment with readings in elementary school. Junior high school in the cafeteria during lunch um, was a dangerous place for somebody like me. So I hung out in the theater department. I hung out on the stage, and I had an elite group of friends, peers within that circle who were also different, unusual, spiritually gifted, but also just open, as many of you are, and they wanted readings. So it was at that time, eighth, ninth, 10th grade in Prince George's County, Maryland, in Suitland Senior High School, in the drama room, in the theater department, behind the curtains of the stage, where me and Anita Pollard and many others were already moving in a spiritual direction. Now, some of those people went deeper into religion. I went deeper into religion only to the extent that I remained at home. Once I ran away from home and found myself on the street at 15, 16, 17, 18, for me, there was no one or nothing to contain who I was and who I was becoming, and my draw to this culture and this tradition. So, me and Wapani, my sister, by my mother, Voncel Savage, we were doing trance meditation at 5, 6, 7 years old. We were rocking ourselves into deep meditative trances without any teaching, without any instruction. And when you grow up in an abusive environment, sometimes you learn to escape. Um, some of you have suffered abuse, sexual abuse, rape, violence as a child. So you know what I'm talking about, where you become third person and you leave your body, and you find other ways to survive wholly at the spirit level. So to be a child in sort of that cult-like religious violent environment in which we grew up in, um, spirit was our escape. Mentalism was our escape. I did a show. Um, I want to say what may have been show 4 or 5 in this series, where I talked about the laws of magic. And the first law, universal law of magic, is mentalism. Understanding the dynamics of your mind, understanding the dynamics of your spirit, understanding the dynamics of your consciousness, understanding the dynamics of your soul, understanding the dynamics of your feelings, understanding that these are not all synonymous. These are very distinct realities that we all encompass, that we all possess. These are very distinct dimensional spaces that we all contain within us. And so doing that work either through an organized initiatory process or naturally, organically, at the will of the ancestors, is just not not easy. And I often say self-initiation is the absolute hardest path. And beyond all the other reasons that I could say that it's hard, finding teachers, all that kind of stuff, knowing what to read, knowing what to study, but being honest enough to call yourself out on your own stuff. And so we do initiation, we do university, we do schools, we do college, we do elementary, junior high, senior high school in order to help us to learn how to learn. We often, especially in modern days, think of the school as somehow having the responsibility to educate your child. The school has a responsibility to teach your child how to learn and to present an environment and material and a soil and a fertilizer and an environment in which we then can self-explore and self-explore learning. You can't really give somebody knowledge. You can't really just gift someone that. We all still individually have to do that work. The teacher can mark 1 + 1 is 2 on the board. We can all copy that and mimic that and write that down. And in the kindergarten, in the first and second grade, we're mimicking letters and we're mimicking the alphabet and we're mimicking the numbers. But there's no real cognizant inner standing that often takes place until higher grades. Often it's described at the university level as the theory of something versus the laboratory work associated with it. In biography, you have the theory of, and you're studying in a book and you're looking at pictures and you're learning words and graphs, but then there's the laboratory work where you're dissecting the frog and you're looking at fungus and learning to use a microscope. Music, which was my arena, theater, music, drama, much the same way. You learn the theory of music. What's a quarter note? What's a half note? What's a step in terms of playing on a keyboard? The details, the technical details of it. And that's in a book. That's my mom, who's a retired music teacher, by the way, standing at the board. But then there's some time before you are picking up a rhythm instrument, or you're playing the piano, or you're singing to note. Many of us have a gift. So you're born, beloved, Wajed, maybe with the gift of singing. I had that. I was singing, humming, drumming as a young child, playing the piano by ear because it was in my living quarters at 3, 4, and 5. But I still had to go to university and learn what notes were, what organized structure in music was, in order to then take that to a higher level. And in this Western culture, many people are attempting to skip that step, often for self-fulfillment, whether that's good or bad. You're trying to heal something, you're trying to replace something, you're trying to find validation, you're trying to create a greater sense of value, you're trying to feel like the goddess, you're trying to feel like the king. But if you don't do that homework, you're just not going to have all the pieces necessary to step into your truth wholly. So I knew 4 or 5, you're different. You're not like other kids. You're not like other people. But the idea of becoming a practitioner, a healer, a reader of other people, well into 30, 20, 25, I'm still trying to get the information, but 30, 33, 35, as I'm still moving forward on my journey, it's becoming more clear what the call is. And your call always continues to evolve, by the way, beloved. It's always in a constant state of motion, Ujo Wajet. And it should be. Nothing in the universe is still. Everything is in motion. Your atoms, your molecules, it's all vibrating light. So when we feel we've arrived, when we feel we have nothing to learn, SU has got you. You've truly been pulled off the path. Papa leg, but it's tricking you now because ego has gotten in the way of filtering in divine light, clear understanding. So understanding happens up here, the math, the science, the how to, the what, when, and why. But the inner standing takes place in here. And so I think that has to happen as a part of that. How do you know you're called? How do you know? I started connecting with the ancestors, Chris Kelly, and the songs again as a child. Now, a child understands at a child's level. Elementary school student learns at an elementary school level. So it continues to evolve. Now, seeing dead people, speaking to ghosts, you know, when kids are playing baseball and stickball and, you know, we weren't allowed to be kids in my household. We were really treated like adults. And my dad often said that in our childhood. So those were the things that were of interest to me. Going into abandoned houses, exploring the woods, the Maryland, Prince George's County, Maryland area, Capitol Heights, Coral Hills area, Bradbury Heights Elementary School area was very wooded when I was growing up there. And we had well-worn walking paths and well-worn bike trails, you know, not organized bike trails by the city, you know, past, you know, beaten into the ground over years of kids utilizing them for that purpose. There was this one particular path right behind Nova Avenue that I used to like to ride. It was primarily downhill. It was littered with trees. So if you weren't careful, you know, you were hitting head on with the tree. But exploring the creek bed, exploring the indigenous spirits within the land, finding arrowheads, finding pieces of obsidian, finding crystal and formica as a child was something that was just normal, you know, for me. What I didn't know it was mica then. I knew it was different. I knew it was shiny. I knew it peeled like paper. I knew that I was drawn to that for some reason. But it was as I continued to follow the call that crystallology came to me. Learning to read books like Katrina Raphael came to me. My first crystal master came to me in Chicago in 1989 and knew everything about me within 2 minutes of knowing me, could tell my story. And when we were together, our powers would amplify. And then we would spend hours, you know, 3 or 4 times a week just walking through the crystal shop, particularly once we learned how to communicate with the stones. So it is indeed, Chris Kelly, something that calls you, you hear it, you respond to it, then you learn how to respond to it, then you learn how to operate in it, then you learn how to perfect that connection at that level of operation. Birds would communicate with me um, as a child. Animals would communicate with me as a child. Um, but again, you don't have a full conceptual understanding of what's going on until you indeed allow yourself to be guided and to have these things explained. It's not taught in school. Many of our parents aren't skilled with operation within gifted children. It's not encouraged to some degree in our culture and our society. So there's nowhere to go. Um, Originally, when any of us feel this call from spirit, this signs, and I always say journaling. So journaling also, Chris Kelly, helped me to identify the signs as you clarified it, that were happening around me, because I was then documenting what I was seeing, what I was feeling, what I was imagining, and then would have some level of proof when those things would come to pass. So I also strongly encourage that. Uncle Glenn, Divine All Blessed, welcome. Thank you so much for being present. Um, I appreciate you all being here in the middle of your day at high noon and at your lunch hour here in this squared circle of gods and goddesses within this sacred space with Divine Prince. I welcome your comments, but I absolutely appreciate your questions, and do write them in all capital letters so that I may see them. S wonders, Zarabanda is not necessarily a who, it's a what. Zarabanda is a what. And it's a representative of a particular path of voodoo, particularly in Brazil and cultures south of, I want to say south of the border, but we're talking south of even Central America, south of Lucome, south of Sanse. We're talking about in the area of Maria Leonza, and systems of that sort. It is like many of the other paths, and amalgamation, a synchronizing of African with indigenous. Um, we need to stop saying Native American because it's not Native American, it's indigenous, and also with whatever colonized spirit practices were brought over with them. All of these traditions, including Haitian voodoo, are synchronized amalgamations of more than one understanding, more than one tradition. Um, so it's a what more than a who, beloved. Please, you all, if you have questions for me to answer in the group, hands down, you need to type it in capital letters, so that I can see it easier. I often, when people talk about books, um, I say read everything. Read everything. And I'm not being shady. Kay, Amin, and others in the group will tell you that I say that at least once a day. Read everything. I'm not suggesting that it's what you want, but there's a spirit of the shortcut. And there's no shortcut to this. There's no shortcut to this. Let's just transform your question. What would I recommend to those who are new to chemistry to read? You're going to have to read math. You're going to have to understand basic laws of science. You're going to have to understand the periodic table. You're going to have to understand, again, some theory about chemistry, some application about chemistry. And that's why we're not all chemists. So you got to read everything. There is no hoodoo book. Let's be clear. There is no capsulized system of this in one book, one place, one thing that's going to give you access into this. It's just not. Hoodoo means I understand at least 100 herbs or more on identification. I know whether they're poisonous or not. I know whether they're edible or not. I know what applications in which to utilize them and apply them or not. Hoodoo means you understand herbs, you understand dirt, you understand clay. You know that dirt is not all one color. You understand that clay is not all one color. You understand that dirt is not made up of the same material in every location, from the barnyard to the field to the lakefront to the river. That's hoodoo. Hoodoo is going to understand a series of songs, and in those songs are embedded Odu. In Yoruba, we call them Odu. Here in America, we might call them blues. We might call them folklore. But within them, like Burr Rabbit, like the signifying monkey, there are going to be hidden capsules of information. To be knowledgeable about hoodoo, you have to be knowledgeable about Orisha. So you've got to study Orisha. You've got to study Ifa. You've got to study Akan. You've got to study Ebe. To be knowledgeable about voodoo, you have to understand West African voodoo as the mother, father, creator, God. You have to understand Haiti as a daughter, You have to understand New Orleans as a sun. You have to understand the Middle Passage, slavery, and how slavery operated in West Africa in order to bring what we know as hoodoo and voodoo to the Americas. So I'm not, listen, I'm being literal. I got Asperger's. I'm being literal. I'm not being shady. There is no what one or two books can I read to understand voodoo and hoodoo. What's an introduction book that I can? There is none. And often when that happens, because some of us are riding on jambalaya like that's it. And I got mad respect for Louisa Tesh, but she did not give away her secrets in that book. She did not give away the mysteries of how you access and get into these traditions in that book. She shared her experience from her preferred preference of her experience. Um, there's a Hispanic woman's name who I'm trying to remember right now. She wrote a really popular Santeria book. It's called the Santeria Experience. Somebody Googled Santeria Experience for me. I want to say her name is Mililago. Oh, wow. I can't remember her last name without getting up and going and getting that book off the shelf. But it's called the Santeria Experience. And she did the same thing. No, okay, I think it's important enough. Give me 5 seconds, y'all. Jean Gonzalez Whippler, the Santeria Experience. Jean Gonzalez Whippler. Now, y'all see the condition of this book. I've had this book 30 years, okay? You see, this is one of the first books that I read in this tradition, Santeria Experience. And as I was trying to suggest with Louisa Tesh and Jambalaya, they shared their experience. And they did not go into the secrets. They did not go into great detail. Santeria Experience, she attempted to explain like you vocalize a painting or a picture. She sought to explain Yemaya. And some of you have read this book. You know what I'm talking about. Going to the ocean and what took place and what happened to her at the ocean. But for those of you in this room who are initiated, you know exactly what I'm talking about. She didn't give any details at all, any real language of the tradition at all, because these authors have sought to protect the traditions for many reasons. If they are trying to offer authentic material in the book, then they're not trying to offend their godparents, their luau, the persons who've initiated them into many of these ritual ceremonies. So they're painting a picture, they're dramatizing their experience. They're not teaching, they're not initiating, if you will, in these books. So I wish listen, I wish it was an unabridged book and I can say, yeah, go and study that book, but you've got to study everything. You must understand a certain level of paganism, a certain level of witchcraft, a certain level of spirituality and religion to operate in any of these traditions. So there's just no shortcut to it. I say read everything. I don't promote and uplift one thing over another. No one has ever heard me here or in Blog Talk Radio do a show where I talked about, what wasn't the truth in these books and who wasn't the truth as an author, and what wasn't correct about their experience, primarily for what I've just said. These authors who are authentic to the cause, and I believe she is. I believe Louisa Tesh is. I believe Mama Vivian is, but they're only going to give you but so much. Now, Mama Vivian, that's somebody that I would say go read her stuff. Um, who originally asked me that book? I dropped my mouse. I need to scroll back up in the chat. Who originally asked me about the Voodoo Hoodoo books? Now, Mama Vivian, who's been initiated in Voodoo in West African, I support her stuff. I often use her material in my own teaching and instruction. So she's someone whose material I would absolutely support. Grace Owens, thank you so much for being with us. What is a light being? Oh, that was hands down. Mama Vivian. Look up Mama Vivian. Um, you know, when I'm doing this show, if I don't have the material right in front of me, I can't pull from from my memory. But she, Mama, I think it's Mama Vivian. I think it's Zogbe, but she was initiated in West African Voodoo. She, in my opinion, has been one of the most prolific writers, authors about Voodoo. And if you give me just a second, and I'm gonna come back to that light being question. Just give me a moment, okay? Uh, let's see. Let's see. Can I find her? Yeah. Go to www.mami Mami Wata WATA MAMIWATA. This particular page in her site is labeled Voodoo, and underneath she has Voodoo with 4 O's. And she'll go into greater detail, as I often do, about that. Some of you are arguing over a U as if that somehow validates what the voodoo is. And a U only says that you speak French. And if you do not speak French and you're spelling voodoo with a U, then you're being pretentious, not smart, and it doesn't speak to you any real knowledge about voodoo whatsoever. If you ain't Haitian, if you don't speak Creole, if you don't speak French, um, you ridiculous if you're trying to promote voodoo with a U as if that's somehow more authentic than voodoo with 4 O's. I speak English. We speak English. There are people who still speak French in Louisiana. I can, je parle français aussi, but we speak English. So to argue over a U is ridiculous. So she's one of my most favored voodoo authors, if I must admit out loud publicly on record that I have a favorite. It's absolutely Mama Zogby, Chief Honan Amengasi, and she has a PhD in education. I'm sorry, I believe she has a master's in education, but she's one of the most prolific, well thought out, well studied um, literary artists as it relates to introducing people to voodoo. She also, unlike many others, validates African American experience in voodoo, the Louisiana experience in voodoo, the Mississippi, New Orleans, experience in voodoo. Um, she's not on that bandwagon of Haiti created voodoo, because it's not the truth. Haiti did not create voodoo. West Africa created voodoo. The gods and the ancestors in West Africa created voodoo, and we carried it here in the belly of those ships. So that would be an author that I would strongly support. A light being is a form in the spirit realm that's entirely made up of light energy, has not a carnal, earthly, material incarnation. Angels are often seen as light beings, though angels can show up in human form, can show up in manifestations and ways to sort of get our attention and be visible to us. If you remember, I want to say with Star Trek: The Next Generation, the one with Whoopi Goldberg. There was a character on that show named Q, the letter Q. He would have been my favorite character. Now, Q was said to be a light being. He was said to have been formulated out of pure light. And I can't remember right now if he evolved to that or if he was an alien. I believe he might have been an alien already created just from that. Um, but he, in terms of imagination and Hollywood and fantasy, in my opinion, would sort of emulate visually what a light being is. Um, they are said to be able to transform, for indeed they are light. And Q could break himself down to his atomic level, that molecular level, and therefore be able to transform and materialize into any person, place, or thing. Now, a human who claims to be a light being or a light worker, more appropriately, is operating in the realm of light and light energy. Quartz, and not just, I wear quartz, I play around with crystals, but understanding quartz at a much more scientific level. Your clarity of quartz, your quartz that rotates and vibrates at varying frequencies, if you will. Reiki workers should be um, knowledgeable and initiated as light workers, for indeed they are manipulating your energy. And ask the average Reiki practitioner how and why and through what means that they're doing that. You don't find too many that can explain it on that level. So it's a manipulation of your energy from the level of light, and then the appropriate usage of light. I know some practitioners who have colored lighting, who use natural lighting, who use degrees of sun lighting in their practice, both Reiki as well as light workers. Um, a darkened space and then varying degrees of very specific types of light focused in to do certain work, remove certain blockages, fill in certain gaps where things need to be repaired, fixed, and replaced. So that's what a light being is. And if you need me to be more specific, hit me, Grace Owens, with your follow-up. All is true and indeed a blessing. Please, I am so humbled by you all being here in the middle of your day at high noon U.S. Central Standard Time. If you do have questions, please do type them in capital letters, as our gods and goddesses have done, and I'll be more than happy to address your questions or comments. What does it mean when Orishas present themselves to you, even though you are not initiated? That's a great question, because you can, and some of you have done so, but you've been misled about what it is that you were buying and or participating in. If you're getting an authentic Ifa, Fa, Voodoo reading, palm nuts, shells, Odus, there's always Orisha embedded in that. There's always Imole embedded in that. There's always egg wounds and ancestors embedded in that. So when Orisha, just like your ancestors showing up in your dreams, showing you signs, seeking to influence your path, gift you information, the Orisha could be protecting you, could be defending you, could be signaling you something very specific to that Orisha's nature and or character. Eshu is going to have something to do with being at a crossroads, crossing over into or away from something you're tricking yourself about. Ego. Yemaya might be speaking to birth, might be speaking to health, might be speaking to balance. Oshun might be speaking to your money, might be speaking to your sense of happiness or lack thereof. People have what's the right word? People have given Oshun this almost a Cupid-like representation. And indeed, Oshun is more likely to be in tears. Oshun is more likely to be sad. Oshun is more likely to be aggressive than the joyful woman in love, young priestess imagery that we often try and give her. Um, it is said that when Oshun is smiling and laughing and happy, she's most dangerous. And so Orisha speaking to you in sign, symbol, in dream. If you were initiated, you would often be encouraged to seek your godparent, seek your Babala, have that information interpreted. Because if you're initiated, every Odu that you've ever done is a record is being kept. Now, some of you, some of my repeat callers and clients, you already know this. Because when you come back to me, I know exactly what Odu we did before. I knew what was said. I know what the homework that was instructed is. And that's where I start. That's the danger of going to all these different readers, all these different tarot readers, all these different psychics, because no one is giving you a consistent straight line to your goal and or destiny. So if you were initiated, for instance, you would then go to your godparents and speak about the dream, speak about the imagery, speak about what's happening, and that will be compared against your most recent Odu and whatever you might be working on at the time. And that's how we interpret. That's how we interpret Loa, Orisha, even ancestors showing up in our dreams and signs and symbolisms, speaking to show us things. Yoel Adams. And if I'm reading your questions out of order, please forgive me. It's because the chat is constantly scrolling up on me, and then I have to go up and find your questions. So I'm just pulling out what I see that's capitalized and what I see first. So if I'm responding to your questions out of order, please forgive me. Yoel Adamus, do I link spirit forces from other teachings outside of voodoo? Teachings linked with Hindu and Shinto, for example? Oh, yes, absolutely. If you've been doing your homework, meaning if you've ever seen a West African voodoo video on YouTube, I don't mean some idiot with a magic box full of money. I'm talking about a real West African voodoo experience on YouTube. And there are many, everything from ancestral forms of masquerade to, you know, portions of real ceremony. And if you notice, you see Hindu imagery a lot in Togo, Benin. You see imagery from India. You see imagery, Buddhas, for instance. And at the root level, indigenous cultures have things that are similar, things that resonate. But you also have to look at ancestry, which is why my ancestral DNA and my ancestral work is so specialized and so popular, because we uniquely take that DNA information along with the divination and the voodoo and clarify what spirits are speaking and operating with you and for you. I believe in Hispanic culture, in Latin culture, and I'm talking Lukumi, Santeria, Palo, and forgive me if my Spanish is incorrect. If somebody speaks Spanish, correct me. I think they call it Gitano or Gitana, which I believe translates into a gypsy. So we all have not necessarily an Orisha or Loa, which are very specific formed powers, but also these gypsy spirits that run through our ancestral lineage that show up. So for me, it's Islamic. Um, Once a month, once every 60 days, I have this purely Middle Eastern, Sunni, Sufi, whirling dervishes kind of, Arab spirit that takes over my house. And I have to play that music. And usually I'm cleaning. I'm cleaning the house, top to bottom, wiping things down. When this is happening, and those spirits move through. When I was a child growing up in that abusive environment, I had a strong connection to Japan for some reason. Some of you have seen me reference my sister and I, Wapani and I, rocking ourselves into these trance-like states, and we could travel to the other side of the globe. And for some reason, it was always Asia. And we would go to China, Japan, and play with other Asian children. And so when I learned how to sew, on a sewing machine at 12, 13, I created this whole pillow shams, drapes, curtains that ran around the walls of the room, bed shams. I mean, the whole 9 yards. And it was purely this Japanese thing. I even had this, they used to sell these paper craft straws. Some of you ain't old enough to remember paper drinking straws. Once upon a time, you can only get a paper drinking straw. There was no plastic drinking straws. And when those fell out of favor in the years of the birth of McDonald's and plastic straws, they became craft straws. And I would craft them together and weave them into these beautiful Japanese lanterns and then put colored lights in them. So the idea that working with spirit, linking spirit forces from other cultures, other ethnic groups, other linguistic lineages is very common for someone who is truly, authentically operating in the realm of spirit. But it's not chaos. It's not random. It's always organized. We just make it look good. It's always organized. And so, just like the Bible suggests, you always got to question the spirit, identify the spirit, understand with clarity who, what it is, what it's trying to impart. And then you grow into building a relationship with that thing, much like you would with me or a house or Elay that you are seeking to initiate with. You got to build relationship and identify these forces, these powers, these spirits that come through. You are not always operating with a spirit that's operating in your best interest. The world is of balance, light and darkness. So we have to discern, we have to judge, we have to clarify with certainty what forces, what powers we're operating with. And I say it a lot for many of you who are playing around with readings and divination. You're actively inviting toxic energy, polluted energy, already corrupted energy to stick to you and your family and your children and your loved ones. So yes, I absolutely do lead spirit forces. I have certain areas of the temple that are dedicated just to Egypt, that are dedicated just to Asia, that are dedicated just to indigenous culture here in the Americas. So yes, absolutely. Bali, Thai, many of us have some spiritual, if not direct DNA links to many of these people of color throughout the world. I certainly appreciate your questions, and most certainly those of you who are writing them in capitals. I certainly appreciate that. Ujo Wajet says, "What does it mean when Orishas?" Okay, we did do that, right? Yeah, yeah, and it could also mean that you should not necessarily have initiations into that particular Orisha. That's another common misunderstanding. You don't choose Orisha. Orisha choose you, and it is then confirmed in the divinations associated with your initiation. And, and so you might have a love for Oshun and then find out through divination that it's Oba and Ogu that you should actively have crowned on your head, either because you have a weakness that needs that support, or you have a strength that requires the continuation of that lineage, spiritual lineage. How do you recognize when Orisha is trying to communicate with you? Uncle Glenn, I thank you for your tricky questions, because that's a tricky question, because again, it goes down to what is your real relationship with your Orisha. So if you're reading jambalaya, you're reading Orisha books, and you just think you have a relationship with Orisha, and then things start showing up, it just could be an extension of your third eye opening. I have avid book readers in this group. I can't read, certain authors like Octavia Butler and the like, Maya Angelou, without visualizing. And sometimes I read things and that shows up. Some of you are studying, and then that magic shows up as a confirmation in your life. So thank you for that, Uncle Glenn. I'm going to answer it not just for you, but for other people who might ask that question. If you aren't in relationship with Orisha, what does that mean? It's like a man who sees an attractive woman, and they work in vicinity. Let's say they work in the same building. And then he gradually, he comes to know she gonna come in at a certain time in the morning. She gonna leave at a certain time in the evening. I might meet her, bump into her at lunch, in the hall, in the elevator, in the cafeteria. You feel a connection to her. You feel drawn to her. You're stimulated by her beauty and her presence, but you don't know this woman. You get no relationship with this woman. And so you're dreaming about her now. You're smelling her perfume now you're at home. You've been at home 4 hours since checkout, since you done punched the clock, but her energy is now haunting you. That's a real thing in voodoo. That's a real thing in spirituality and religion. That's a real thing in dealing with Loa and Orisha, but it doesn't mean you're having a relationship still. You still at some point have to walk up and introduce yourself to that man or woman saying, hey, my name is DivinePrince. Nice to meet you. Can we do lunch? I find your attire interesting. I find your website curious. I find what you post about intriguing. What does that mean? We don't know how to communicate anymore. You and I do. Me and Uncle Glenn talk every day, all day. But it's the same thing, Uncle Glenn, in terms of communicating with these spirit forces. It's literally like having people in your house. And people who've been here to this temple fully get that. I live in a corner of this space, and everything else belongs to Loa and Orisha and the ancestors and the spirit forces. They're literally in your space. You see this Mardi Gras Indian suit. You see this maroon Egun ancestral suit. You know it's on a mannequin, but that's a living, breathing thing. And it's at rest now until I put it on. And so once you on, because there's a thing of Orisha and Loa, Uncle Glenn, showing up and then inhabiting and then partaking in and then possessing and then becoming a part of your actions and or activities. Sometimes when you're crowned with an Orisha, that Oshun then can operate through you. Shango can then operate directly in you. So it's not just showing up outside of you. What's showing up outside of you is a sign, is a reflection of something internally that should be addressed, that should be answered, that should be responded to. Thank you so much, Uncle Glenn, for your continued support, encouragement, motivation. I just love you for being present. Am I missing something? Hugh, what got me into voodoo? Okay, I'll re-answer that. I've answered that earlier in the show. So please go back and watch the first part of the show. It was in my family at 1, 2, 3. It was one of the first things that I heard in my family was story about voodoo, story about the Trail of Tears, story about Native Americans and enslaved people. But I think you also have to be born with it from a spirit sense. It does have to exist within you. And it doesn't mean that you can't be born with the voodoo in you and speaking to you like I was and still, have to fumble through an evangelical Christian upbringing. I don't think it takes away from spirit interacting with you. You either acknowledge spirit or you don't. You either legitimize your experience or you don't. And it's really a separate thing from, it's a relative truth from what might be going on with you in that present moment. But then as I got older and matured, and could then actively choose to finance initiations, pay for initiations, commit to studying and initiations, that then greatly um, influenced, my path. So yeah, I was born into voodoo reluctantly. My family was not trying to keep the voodoo alive. The stories were still alive. The legends were still alive. The tales of such were still alive, but no one was actively trying to come out in the public, in the open, as I have in the last 20 years, in representation of the voodoo. I also think that what I do is unique in that I am called by the ancestors and the spirits to birth this revival, this revolutionary revival of voodoo in a way that's accessible to us. It has not always been accessible to us. It has been made more accessible south of the border, if you will, than it has been for us. So I also think I am unique in sort of the overt demonstration of the voodoo. Some of my detractors and my haters locally would try and suggest that the voodoo has somehow been secret, somehow been hidden in their family, if not by them themselves. But I've said since the very first time I showed up online in 2005, you can't do this in isolation. It's impossible. It's impossible. You can't heal, work magic, free people from jail and incarceration and in the criminal justice system, bad situations on their job, bad situations in their household and in their marriage and love life, and think that's going to be kept secret. Think that people are going to keep a cap on that. So there is no operating in this in isolation. You got to get your bird from somewhere. You got to get your goat from somewhere. You got to get your palm oil from somewhere. There's no operating in isolation in this. So indeed, I was born with it and born into it. But I then had to decide, Hugh, to actualize it and validate it, if you will, and move it forward. Paul, are you okay? Paul. Oh, okay. No, you good. All is a blessing. So, um, no, I love Octavia Butler, Yoel Adams. That's one of my favorite authors is Octavia Butler. Yes. And Parable of a Sower is one of my favorite books. If you live in California and you have not read Parable of a Sower by Octavia Butler, I suggest you run out right now and get that book. It also had a great deal to do with my eventually moving away from California and seeking my roots and my ancestors here in the South. Much of what I experienced in that book. So I'm not going to give that away for those who have not yet read it. It's Parable of the Sower, Sower by Octavia Butler. Thank you so much, Kay Amina. You be on the job. And Queen Bonita, I don't know where you are in the middle of the day, but we miss you when you're not in the group. And Fire Reds, thank you so much. Paul, Fire Red said, hey, how you doing? Divine all blessed. We certainly appreciate you. Paul is here helping us to sew and get this Mardi Gras masquerade, this ancestral masquerade together. So his fingers is toe up just like mine. Oh, okay. I didn't know if Queen Bonita was in the group or not. Thank you so much. I didn't see her name. Maybe I need to scroll back up. Oh, there you are. Hey, Queen Bonita Henderson. Thank you for being present. Billy Wilkerson, thank you so much for being a consistent listener and viewer. Zone 9, thank you so much. Bonsoir, Ashe. Yeah. Mac and Dog, come on out, bruh. Where you at? I see you. Tia Scolding, Oh, okay. Katia's mom. Thank you so much, Katia. I believe you and I have been social media friends for a long time. I appreciate your continued support and commit to what I do and what I say and what I'm trying to bring. Um, Uncle Glenn, I hope I recognize all of your questions. Thank you so much for the offerings and the donations. They are most certainly appreciated. I do prefer that you use my PayPal me. It's my understanding that YouTube gets a great deal of the donation button money, and I'm still not seeing that money move from YouTube into my PayPal. So I'm still not sure what's going on with the YouTube chat donation button. So I'm kind of glad you all have kept it to the minimum. But I would appreciate your offerings and your donations as Kay Amina has interjected in the chat by way of my website and by way of my paypal.me/the Divine Prince. All is truly and indeed a blessing. I'm honored and grateful. We got to eat. We can't just sow 12 to 16 hours a day. We got to eat. So I appreciate you and your offerings. I just ask that you all use the PayPal me link that Kay Amina may have already put in the chat. I don't see it, but she might have already put it in the chat. I certainly do appreciate you. Um, Lemmy Adams. I hope you're still in the group because I'm getting ready to answer your question. And I think that's a great question. Uh, but how do you feel about non-melanated persons studying voodoo? Now, again, Lemmy Adams, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. I'm going to first respond to your question very literally. How do I feel about non-melanated persons studying voodoo? I'm not averse to anyone studying anything. Studying anything. Get your knowledge, get your information, know the history. Both black and white people need to understand slavery. Both black and white people need to understand the Middle Passage. Both black and white people need to understand post-traumatic slave disorder. So both black and white people need to understand religion and spirituality. Um, Now, how do I feel about non-melanated persons practicing the voodoo? And I have non-melanated persons that study with me, that seek my services, and I give them the same exact instructions that I give everybody else. Have your DNA done. Have your DNA done. And then we look at your DNA and we work then from a platform based in your lineage. There is no voodoo that's general. That's a misunderstanding. There is no general voodoo. You're going to be operating in Ewe, Akan, Fan, Yoruba, Igbo, and the like. Even if you're looking at structured, organized Haitian voodoo, you don't understand that there are nations in there. 21 divisions. There are nations in there that represent ethnic groups. The Indos in Spanish, or the Indios, or the indigenous people, are one nation, or one pathway. So I like the question. How do I feel about non-melanated persons studying? Study. Do your homework. I think the more studied we are, the less likely we are to show disrespect. The more studying we do, the more likely we are to show respect, to show honor, to acknowledge what is true, what is real. That's why I encourage people to research me. I encourage people to do their homework on me. I encourage people to figure out where I was, where my footprint was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, 35 years ago, 40 years ago, and you're going to find my footprint is in voodoo. I didn't get online and discover voodoo in Facebook or MySpace. So studying is open to everybody, and everybody should study. And I think that the more studying that's done, the greater level of respect should then be demonstrated. I think if people are studying, truly doing their homework, then it should be less buffoonery and coonery and playing around with these traditions and magical overnight love spells and magical overnight hit the lottery spell. All of that will fade away if people truly did their study and understood how this works and that this is a lifestyle. This is a part of who I am. It's a part of my identity. It's a part of my personality. It's a part of my being. It's a part of how I think. It's a part of how I process things, both good and bad. It's how I deal with my past. It's how I address my future. It's all things. So I'm open, beloved. Lemmy Adams, I love that question. Study, please, everybody study, but respect the voodoo. Respect the ancestors. Ancestors see you. Ancestors see me. Ancestors see all. So no one can perpetrate the voodoo because you can't fake out the ancestors. Come on now. You working fine in the con and you ain't bit more fine in the con, but you think my ancestors are gonna show up to help you trap somebody for some foolishness while you still remain legally married over here and got two or three and four over there. See, that's the kind of stuff that has dirtied and sullied voodoo and hoodoo and obia and conjure over the generations. That's what I'm here to undo. That's what I seek to tear down and break down. I'm not in competition with the next practitioner. I'm not in competition with commercialism. I'm not in competition with tourism. I'm not in competition with entertainment. I'm not in competition with Anne Rice and imagination and creativity. I'm not in competition with that. I'm here to be a demonstration of, an example of, and revive authentic demonstration of voodoo. First within me and then within my own practice, my own circle, my own life, and then with those like you who truly absolutely want this information and this knowledge. But anybody can study, Lemmy. Anybody can read. Anybody can Google search. Anybody can, but when in terms of coming to me, that studying then becomes initiation. There's no can I can I study with you? Can I learn this voodoo with you without initiating? There's no such thing as that. So, yes, we have anthropologists and authors and writers who, again, talk about the voodoo, share the voodoo, much like the journalists would, the retelling of our story. And we have to always look at who they are, what their motivation is, what their real intent is, what's behind them producing that book, that video, that piece of information. Is it here to empower us, or is it a continuation of disempowering the African born in America forcibly brought here through the Middle Passage and in slavery? So I say study, beloved Lemmy Adams. I say study, and I say study everything. Study it all. Study it all. How do you recognize? Oh, okay. I think I'm scrolling up again. Am I missing somebody's question? Satanism. How do I feel about Satanism? Oh, wow. Yeah. I don't have I have a strong feeling, Hugh, about Satanism. Satanism is never been good. Satanism has never been indigenous. Satanism has never been African. Satanism is, and I talked about this a few shows ago, Satanism, witchcraft, the binding of angels and demons to do magical work, all have its roots in Eurocentric culture, all have its roots outside of the indigenous world of people of color, if you will. And through bastardization of our traditions, Satanism, paganism, witchcraft, Wiccan, voodoo, Ifa, Aztec, Mayan, Um, Egyptian, Kemetic is all the same to people now. People believe it's all the same. It's all just spirit. It's all just light. I can do what I want, and it's absolutely not. Um, some people have even tried to mix up Satanism with Eshu. People have tried to mix up Satanism with Papa Legba. People have tried to mix up Lucifer with Eshu. And let's be clear, Satan and Lucifer are not the same power, not the same deity, and neither of them have any connection whatsoever to Eshu. The idea of demonizing Eshu, Ilegwa, Papa Legba, and Voodoo as a whole is white supremacist, is post-traumatic slave disorder at its finest, is a continuation of enslavement, is a continuation of the domination of the world by the blonde-haired, blue-eyed, Aryan Christian Islamist. Because understand, Islam also has an Aryan root, uh, just as if all this other stuff does, that we now have a very different understanding about. So I have a very negative feeling about Satanism. I don't like Satanism. I don't appreciate Satanism. I'm not fearful of Satanism. I bind devils, cast them out, send you back to your origins. Okay, but I'm not in support of Satanism, and particularly anyone who's seeking a connection to their ancestral root uh, through Mother Africa and the indigenous world, Mayan and Aztec included, Belize, Honduras. There was no Satanism there. Satanism came as a result of white supremacy, world domination, and enslavement by way of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. It was a direct response to, um, you know, pissing on the statue of Christ, turning the crucifix upside down, doing things that they identify as blasphemous. Just the word blasphemy is Christian in its origin. Just the word pagan is Christian in its origin. It means everything that's not Christian. So Satanism goes right along with that. I sweep that right into that same uh, gumbo, for lack of better words. And it's not. You didn't say this, but you asked me how I feel. It's not African. It's not indigenous. It's not healing. It's not holistic. It's not empowering in any way. To some degree, the organized world religions got it right about Satanism and Satan and the devil. They just didn't tell you who that was. And we've had world leaders in the last 100 years who've tried to tell you who that was. And it's just not politically correct today to say who that is. And it's not politically correct to say today when individuals are acting under the influence of the devil, of evil. And so they're ascending to political power and positions today, which fuels that whole Illuminati story, that somehow this is encouraged by the Illuminati. The Illuminati originally, the purpose was to bring light, to illuminate in a time when darkness was upon the land by way of Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. People weren't allowed to dance. People weren't allowed to enjoy music. People were not allowed to explore their imagination, to explore spirituality, to explore science. The world was flat, and everybody accepted that until people were willing to risk their lives to prove that wrong. So Satanism is not, because then you get back to the U.S. and decide I'm going to do my own thing, and those resources don't make it back. So the next group that comes is charged a much higher price, and then you go on to the next thing, the next destination, disillusioned with why you're not getting more from this thing that you've paid so much to get initiated into. So thank you for that, Uncle Glenn. Your ancestors come before, deity lineage, Orisha lineage, if you will. And that's also another misunderstood thing. Not everybody's going to get every deity, every orisha, every power. Some people are just going to work with Eguns. Some people are just going to work with Oshun or Shango or a house or family set of spirit forces. But connecting with your ancestors come before connecting with those powers. And so if you are, someone asked earlier about seeing and experiencing those forces without initiation, it's still resonating back to your ancestors. And those who've done the ancestral DNA with me, I'm sorry, the ancestral divination with me, understand what I'm saying. Because we throw a Odu, we create file on the board, and we receive a code. You know, the markings that we make on the E5 board, depending on whatever the Odu that fell is, and within that are born Imole, which are higher than the Orishas, the parents of the Orishas. They're more powers removed from the human experience. We've humanized Loa and Orisha to a great degree. And I believe that's another reason why some of you are so conflicted between gratifying, satisfying your flesh and your ego and your personal needs and desires versus being reborn, being renewed of the mind, the body, and the spirit in magic at any real level that can then carry out into your work. So you got to do that ancestral work first. Now, those who commit to initiation, the full initiation, that's already in there. They're gonna do ancestors. They're gonna then ascend a ladder of, if you will, of powers and deities, and then a divination will be done to determine which ones you are proficient in or have chosen you specifically to work with. Okay, Emma's daughter, that's a great question. When I first acknowledged voodoo, did my Christian family and friends treat you differently? Oh yeah, absolutely. Maybe you missed the first part of the show. I was on the street at 14. I couldn't exist in my house. But prior to me running away, I had no keys to the house. I had to come home and sit on the porch until my mother or my father, we were latchkey kids until they came home. Um, Absolutely, I was treated differently. I was treated differently both in the church and in the community at large. Now, I was a minister of music. I played the piano, played the organ, wrote songs, sang songs, directed the choir. So I was an asset to the church. And often these assets to the church are treated uniquely different than other members of the church. And some of y'all know what I'm talking about. That's why you got, so many of my brothers and sisters, so many gay folk and sissies, running the choir, on the piano, run organizations, and I'm a sissy, so I'm not being derogatory, but yet you hear it being preached against, you hear it being abominized from the pulpit, yet those people still stay present. So you start, the conflict is already setting up with what is being said, what's being taught, what's being preached versus what your eyes see going on. You see the wealth, you see the prosperity, you see the celebrity, you see, the $100 dinners that they have at the end of service. So the idea now that I'm operating in a gift in that environment, and if you don't know Emma's daughter, I was raised evangelical Christian, apostolic. So voodoo was already in there. Speaking in tongues, casting out devils, people falling out, fainting, spirit manifestation, healing, laying on of hands, all that stuff was going on. Cleansing, spirit baths, all that was already going on. Many of you know that as spiritualist churches. But the idea now that I'm not acknowledging the white Jesus and the white God, now that I'm not acknowledging the authenticity of the Bible somehow being the unmitigated word of God, even though there are over 300 redos of it. And then it being redone in the Quran, much of the Quran, is mirroring the stories of the Bible. So yes, I was treated differently. I felt differently. I could see all the polarities about me being demonized over here, but being acknowledged and honored over there. And some of you are doing it to me today. Um, you know, you love the fact that I'm voodoo and that you can access that through me, but you completely ignore and deny my humanness whatsoever. And so that is still happening in a different environment, in a different degree. I'm not no longer in that church environment, Emma's daughter. I'm no longer in that religiosity, toxic religiosity. But that toxic religiosity exists in all traditions. It absolutely exists in Santeria and Lakomi and Haitian voodoo. Haitian voodoo practitioners are vicious to one another and to people who are not Haitian. And I say it all the time. They're not about to give you any mysteries. They're not about to give you any secrets. They're going to take your money. They're going to perform these tourist-based Haitian conzos for whomever and send you back to the States and let you all do what you do while they maintain absolute control and authority and legitimacy over Haitian voodoo. And that's why I remind you, I'm not here to argue Haitian voodoo. I'm not in competition with Haitian voodoo. You can have your O's and your U's, you know, you can eat your U's all day long and let me have my 4 O's because it's still voodoo. And the arguing over that level of the semantic is foolish. So you've got to get to a place. How did I handle it, Emma's daughter, where you first have to have the language. You first have to be operating in that truth. It would be hard for me to convince my evangelical Christian parents. Both of my parents are still evangelical Christian, by the way. My mother has written 3 books. Um, I view my dad as the devil. I view my mother as a more accurate, authentic representation of Christianity, if you accept Christianity's legitimacy at all. But I couldn't cut off my mother. I couldn't cut off, certain people in my family, but I had to learn a new language. I had to learn a new demonstration. And so if I couldn't speak truth to what I was doing, they certainly weren't going to be able to accept it. So if you can't make sense of what your ancestors are doing, how the voodoo is operating in your life, how the spirit is working for you, then others will not. That's also the answer to why some of you who are perpetrating as practitioners don't have any following, because you have not walked through that fire and did that work for yourself, so that it then is reflected in your demonstration. And your demonstration is not just what you say, but how you live. So my dirty laundry is out there. Who I am is out there. All the things that you all would judge me for and prejudice me for, I serve it up to you on a silver platter, because you're not here for that. You're here for the voodoo. You're not here for how much hair is on my head, on my face, whether I got my faux front teeth in or not. You're not here for that. You're here for the voodoo. You all are not here to befriend me. I don't mean you, Kay Amina. I don't mean you, Uncle Glenn. I don't mean you, Queen Bonita. But y'all not here to be my friend. Y'all not here to kiki with me. Y'all are not concerned about if I'm hungry when this light goes off, if my rent is paid. Y'all don't give a damn. Y'all don't care if I make it out Mardi Gras, Mardi Gras Day in this heavy, expensive suit. Y'all don't care. And I'm not mad. You all are here for the voodoo, and that's what I bring. And that's why you don't see me switching up. I've tried being humorous. I've tried showing you other aspects of who I am. I've shown you me in TV, movies, commercials. I've shown you me in makeup. I've shown you me in costume. Um, y'all are here for the voodoo. That's it. That's it. And my life is not in competition with the voodoo. I've made room for the voodoo, and my friends and my family would say I've made major sacrifices in doing so. major sacrifices in doing so. And so there is no competition because I know you ain't about to do that. You're not about to give up your social life and your popularity and your friends and your family. And not you, Emma's daughter. I'm talking to the other million people that's watching us right now. Y'all not about to do that for this voodoo. So play with your tarot cards, play with your ruins, do Satanism for God's sake. Just leave the voodoo alone. Hands off the hoodoo, hands off the voodoo, respect the obia, respect the conjure, because it will bite you. I won't, but it will. It will. It'll bite you. And some of us have been around a minute, and we've seen them come and go, and we've seen them fall. We've seen them hit the hard ground. We've seen them come out the gate running. YouTube, Blog Talk Radio, MySpace. I keep saying MySpace and Yahoo 360 because we've been doing this since before some of y'all graduated high school. We've been doing this since before some of y'all even knew who Louisa Tesh was, or knew what a Santeria Experience Gonzalez Whippler book was. This book almost older than some of y'all in this chat right now. So just be true. Just be true, Emma's daughter. Be honest about where you are. Be honest about, and you didn't suggest you were asking for yourself. I know this could be a very general question. Anybody who's coming into these traditions and you still in this crazy religious family, how do you then make that transition? So I'm not assuming, and don't anybody in the group assume that I'm telling Emma's daughter's story. I'm just responding to her question. And so you've got to find words to be truthful, sit in your truth, stand in your truth about who you are, where you are, and that you no longer can legitimately participate in that religion, in that belief system. And don't try and pretend or speak to what you don't know yet. I'm not sure yet. I'm not clear yet. I'm trying to figure that out for myself. Say that, whoever I'm talking to, say that if that's where you are. But don't continue the pathology. Don't continue it on. I struggled with that with my mom because, back in my 20s, my mom couldn't hold a conversation without Jesus, quoting the scripture, which in a mother-son relationship was very impersonal. And I had to remind her, you're not witnessing to a stranger on the corner. I sat in that church with you. I know all of this stuff already. So if you got people in your family who's that kind of religion, remind them, I was there with you. I've been there. I've done that already. Give me my space to stand my truth. Give me my space to find myself, to get clarity about who I am, because they will pressure you back. Peer pressure is uniquely strong in our community. Paul and I and some of my other team Black Hawk Voodoo been watching Underground TV series Underground, and I invite you all to watch Underground on Hulu if you haven't done so already. It was a 2-season TV series that we filmed here in New Orleans last year. It shows a side of slavery many of y'all ain't never seen before. But you will see in active work how this religion was crammed down our throat from both the pastor and from your fellow family member. So understand, remember that they don't know. They're operating from a script. They repeating a script in their head. So don't immediately get worked up when they try and reinforce that church thing. But you can't keep going to church and then studying the voodoo and think that they're going to accept it, that you're serious about it. So that's how I dealt with it. That was my experience. I had to find the words. I had to know enough about it to explain it. So before I got away, I did have to study the Bible. I did. And many of you, in getting away from the church, that's how you have done it. I started studying the Bible. I started discovering the truth about the Bible and how the Bible came to be. And it made it that much easier for me to step away from it. Now, the deprogramming the mind took some work. And I also think that's where my Gitano and my gypsies came into play, because, I could be around the house and those old spirituals and those old church songs would come up. And I felt I had to replace them actively, consciously, um, replace them with something. And so replace that pattern, replace that voice, replace that recording with something new. And in the 12 step philosophy, they say fake it until you make it. And I don't mean be fake, I don't mean perpetrate. I mean, tell yourself I'm happy, even though you might not be. Tell yourself that I can get away from this bondage, even though you haven't figured out how yet. I'm going to get away from this bondage. The ancestors are moving me away from this thing. The ancestors are bringing that which I need to me right now in this divine moment. You've got to say it. You got to replace it. You got to repeat it. Write it down on a piece of paper 100 times. That reinforces it. Say it out loud 1,000 times. That reinforces it. Repeat it over and over again in your head. When you ain't got nothing better to do, you got to reprogram it. And then it'll be easier for you to find those words when you're backed in the corner. When you're at the Thanksgiving Day table, when you're at the Easter dinner, I guess that's the next major Christian holiday, right? Is Easter. Um, it'll be on your tongue. And you'd be surprised how some of your family want to be re-educated. So I like Facebook in that a lot of my families probably listen to me right now. Y'all don't pick up the phone and call me. But I'm grateful that you're listening. And so in Facebook, they see what all of us, what we post, what we talk about, what we share, what we read. And now my mama's reading some of that stuff. Now Wapani's reading some of that stuff. So your demonstration is everything. And if you're saying voodoo, but you looking Christian, but you acting like a thought, ain't nobody buying it. Ain't nobody buying it. Male or female, ain't nobody buying it. 10 posts about hoodoo, root work, and conjure, and then the next 5 posts, you got a woman with her vagina out on your page. I mean, come on. Come on. So that doesn't help us either, Emma's daughter, when we are trying to demonstrate a new path, but then others who are bastardizing ATR are showing up in social media doing that, then our family thinks that all of us are that this is just a cover, a front, a mask, a look for something else. And for sure, when they start charging you and asking you to, to pay them for services and work, and they barely 30, barely 22, but you got enough experience to help a 54-year-old man, woman, and child through divorce or through a family trauma, or through a legal case. Come on now, we have got to be more wise about ourselves. We got to treat ourselves more sacred. We absolutely have to. And Emma's daughter, I appreciate your question. I appreciate deep, well thought out questions like that not only give me an opportunity to respond to you, but to respond to other people in the group who may also have, if not that specific question, a similar feeling or thought. Douglas Thornstone, thank you so much for being present. Tim Carson, thank you for being present. Assad Ali, thank you so much for being present. Please, everybody, respect Kay Amina. Kay Amina is the group moderator. She's the disciplinarian of the chat. Sometimes I can't see what's being said, so mind your business. She might block you before I even get a chance to see the negative comments. So I'm not assuming anybody has said or done anything, but just Kay Amina is the moderator. She's posting what I want her to post. She's sharing links that I would otherwise be happen to type here myself right now. So just be on your best behavior, men, women, and young people. Just be on your best behavior. All is a blessing. I welcome all of you. No, Queen Bonita, they're not free from organized religion's prejudice. Even if you have the family member who sees you making the change or the transition, they then don't know how to go back and explain that to their church folk. So my mama's watching me represent voodoo out loud and in public, in the media and whatnot. And now she's got to explain, well, Sister Harris, Sister Savage, ain't your son representing voodoo? And so then she's then got to explain it. So if you can't explain it, your mom and them can't explain it. The rest of your family is not going to be able to explain it. The community is not going to be able to explain it. And then it's a vicious cycle of tearing down anything that's not Christian. Anything that's not Christian looks chaotic, looks disorganized, looks out of touch. If indeed, as Queen Bonita says, you've been programmed into that religious prejudice that follows these world traditions of Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. Please, I appreciate each and every one of you. I'm grateful for your offerings and donations. I most certainly do need them and appreciate them right now. We are sewing 12, 16 hours a day. We really don't have a lot of time to do much else than sew and then this broadcast. So I appreciate your offerings and your donations by way of PayPal. Help me, Kamina, www.paypal.me/the DivinePrince. I certainly do appreciate you. I also do appreciate and have time for your serious request for readings, divination, services, and work. I appreciate all your requests, but if your request is not specific, if you're not following my protocol, I don't have time right now until at least after Mardi Gras Day to stop and go into a whole lot of hands-on explanations. I just don't. And I get a lot of traffic. 99.9% of people understand my email communications. So be clear about what it is you want, what it is that you need. Please send your offering and your donation. I'll be more than happy to assist you, even in the midst of trying to make this Mardi Gras Day deadline. Oh, it's a blessing. Please, I'm going to be with you just a few more moments. Do type your pertinent questions in all capital letters so that I can see them and distinguish them from the other things in the group. Yes, you must affirm and encourage yourself to freedom, Queen Bonita. You absolutely must. Even if you can't see it in the moment, even if you don't feel it in the moment, you've got to. Alana Francine, I'm grateful too. I'm humbled and honored and grateful to the ancestors that you made it out. You made it out with your soul, with your mind, with your heart, with your consciousness. You made it out. And be grateful, because I'm grateful with you and for you. I recognize that freedom. I've been in many of those groups and many more groups that I have not talked about, because my job is not here to tear down other groups. It's too much work to be done. These groups will tear themselves down. These individuals will tear themselves down. These individuals will reveal themselves. What's unfortunate is that many of you waste time, money, energy, and get hurt in the process before you're backed into the proverbial spirit corner to figure out who you are, where you're going, what you need, what you want, what you desire. And just as I suggested with Emma's daughter in terms of working with our still very religious family, you got to be true to yourself. You got to be real. You got to be able to sit in your truth, positive and negative. You got to be able to sit in what you don't know and be honest with yourself about it, because you can't then receive it. The universe can't then bring to you that which you absolutely need if you keep saying, I'm good, I don't need that. I'm fine, I don't need that instruction. I don't need that extra help. Then the universe is going to conspire to prove you right. The universe conspires to prove what you say to be the truth. So if you expect the negative, absolutely the negative comes, returns again until you learn the lesson of that thing that you seek. Yes. Okay. 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 All right. All is a blessing. Oh, double. So forgive me. You all know as people in the house, we got to sew and get this Mardi Gras thing together. So yes, I digressed a little bit. I'm a little far from my question, but yes. Oh, Alana Francine. Yes, I'm too grateful that the ancestors were able to uh, bring clarity to your mind, your sight. Okay, the chat is moving very fast on me right now. Give me a second to. I know I'm being asked some questions, but I can't find them right now. Uh, Someone asked about do I need help, but I can't find it now because the chat is in constant motion. Tina Carson, thank you so much for your story. Thank you so much for that. Um, Darla Neely, thank you so much. We are truly, truly, and indeed grateful for your being present. Fire Red, thank you so much. Ms. Jazz, to you, thank you so much. We are certainly honored and grateful. Um, I'm looking for that question. Oh yeah, I do need help sewing. Dark Soul Jua. You local to New Orleans, I absolutely need sewing help. Absolutely. And so if you're available to spend, several hours here with us, drinking coffee and talking about voodoo and spirits and culture while we sequence and sew, yeah, please send me a direct email at DivinePrince at houseofthedivineprince.com. I'm going to assume that if you are a local, you know its rules to this. Secrets, mystery. You can't talk about what you see here. You can't discuss outside of my house what we talk about while you're here. You can't discuss my suit, what it looks like, what you're working on. None of that until well after Mardi Gras Day. But if you're here locally and you want to help, absolutely. Um, it's a form of initiation. I have godchildren who found their way into my voodoo house by helping me to sew. So yes, absolutely. If you're a local um, and you want to sew and you know how to sew, or you think you can learn quickly of how to sequence dark soul jua, absolutely. I need you and I need your help. I appreciate that. And I appreciate all the offerings and donations. We're still buying feathers. Feathers and plumes cost $10 a piece. Um, we're still buying sequins. I spent $200 on sequins, just sequins on yesterday. And there's still pieces of the suit that last minute we're getting together. It's a part of being an Indian. It's a part of being a Mardi Gras Indian. It's not like being a Zulu. It's not like crew of Oshun. It's not like any of the other crews in Mardi Gras. We absolutely do the hardest work, the longest duration of time in terms of work, um, just to make everybody happy, for 3, 4, 5 days out of the year. I do it for the voodoo. I do it for the ancestors. And if that's the spirit, yes, I absolutely need your help, Dark Soul Jua, and I welcome you. All is truly and indeed a blessing. I'm going to end the show. I didn't even plan to do an hour and 50 minutes. I thought I was going to do 30 minutes and go back to sewing. But once I get started, once I start talking, once y'all start participating, you get a show from me. And that's what I want. If people aren't going to ask questions, aren't going to participate, I'm going to sign into this YouTube and I might do 15 minutes and I'm going to be out. And so far, that has not happened because you all are indeed the most educated chat group in YouTube Live, in my opinion. So I certainly do appreciate each and every one of you. Dark Soul Jua, um, I'm expecting your email to already be in my box. If you're serious, I certainly do need the help. Thank you, Kay Amina. Thank you so much, Queen Bonita. You have no idea how much you're keeping this together. All due respect to Queen Bonita Henderson. Uh, she's one of our faithful priestess and ministers here. She's helping to keep this together, and I appreciate you. And I appreciate all of you who can send your offerings and your donations. I'm not going to be Reverend Ike. I'm not going to be Tammy Faye Baker. I'm not going to be Creflo Dollar. I'm not about to beg y'all to help me to maintain this. This is not why I do this. And I should not have to beg. Um, People show up, they take pictures, they shake my hand, they say, I've been following you for years and it's Mardi Gras Day and I'm here and I love what you do and I support you. Help a brother out. Okay. PayPal me, paypal.me/ the Divine Prince. Help a brother out. We say we want culture. We say we want this voodoo to be mainstream. We say we want an option other than the church, other than Hebrew Israelites, other than Muslims, and other than New Wapus, and other than all this other stuff that has not helped us, that has not held us up, that has not supported us. We got to support that which we gain support from. I help those who help me. I support those who support me. I advertise for those who advertise for me. Treme Coffee House, the corner of North Villery and St. Philip, here in this beautiful and historic, legendary Treme. I advertise for Treme Coffee House. I support Treme Coffee House. Mr. D's on the corner of Basin and North Robinson. His second location, the first location is in Gentilly. I support you. You support me. I support you. Ashe Cultural Arts Center. I support you on Aretha Castle Haley Boulevard. WBOK Radio. I support you. Send you $30 every month. You support me. So it's universal. We can't keep sitting back. We can't keep watching and studying and questioning, especially you 40, 50, 60-year-old folk, and you still studying and looking and questioning. It's time that we stand up. I'm standing up in this. I go hungry for this. I've gone without power and the internet for this. I've had to punch my cell phone to respond to some of you when I couldn't keep things flowing. I don't come on and beg you all for help. I don't. I appreciate it. I would prefer you do it in PayPal, but thank you so much. I appreciate it. A great deal of what you hit this donation button for is going to YouTube. None of it has made its way to me. So, Mikhail Allen, I appreciate you, but you're supporting YouTube right now. Please support me by way of my website and my PayPal link at paypal.me/ the Divine Prince. I've been doing this show not very long. This is what, our 18th show, but none of those donations have made their way into my account. So I don't know where that's going. I still don't quite understand it. I do know those like Queen Bonita and Kay Amina and many others who have supported me through PayPal. We can access that. So I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Thank you for understanding. I hope I don't sound like I'm bitching. Thank you for understanding. And I certainly do appreciate you. I've got to check on this food that's in the oven, or it's going to burn up. My sowers have to eat and drink and smoke and be merry. So I have to move. I have to move forward and support my Team Black Hawk Voodoo, Team Black Hawk Voodoo, and we look forward to meeting you in the streets, Mardi Gras Day. I'm going to do my best to be here tomorrow at high noon U.S. Central Standard Time. If I'm not, know that I'm sowing. I'm sowing. I am sowing. You see that? You see the bruises and the discoloration, and I'm sewing for real by hand. This ain't no joke. This ain't no joke. One bead at a time, one sequence at a time, one feather at a time. And so I'll be here with you and for you and yours in your endeavors, one day at a time, here at high noon U.S. Central Standard Time on YouTube Live with the revolutionary Hoodoo New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes. All is truly and indeed a blessing. Asheo, Ashe, thank you so much. Thank you for giving Queen Bonita and Kay Amina the utmost respect. Thank you for respecting yourselves and each other in this shared sacred space of gods and goddesses. I'm trying to be sure that I don't end the show without acknowledging each and every one of you. And of course, if you have questions or comments, um, I certainly do appreciate you sending them directly to my website at www.houseofthedivineprince.com, www.houseofthedivineprince.com. Understanding that divine has two I's and one E, DIVINE, Divine Prince. I am certainly honored and grateful for each and every one of you. My YouTube, Voodoo Thai, all is truly and indeed a blessing. I will see you and greet you on tomorrow. Yes, all is a blessing. Thank you so much. Peace and blessings. Odabo.